then we remove all of the identifiable information, we assign them a code, and then we move the data to what we refer to as our operational data store. So again, identifiable information, 3 or 4 people in our agency can see it. De-identified information, that's when we open it up to a slightly larger audience of researchers, folks on my staff who do policy analysis and reporting. All of our dashboards use that data. And so that's a larger audience, but it still requires, we do a background check for all of those people and a lot of different security and protocols. And then everything, so it's all being done on de-identified data. Everything that's released from the system has to be aggregated. And then if there's any small cell sizes, we suppress those to make sure that you couldn't back into figuring out.
Less than 10 or less.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the big concept. We do a lot of reports. There's a lot of mandatory reports that we do that the legislature has assigned to us that we've been reporting on for several years now. This opportunity came along with this organization called the Coleridge Initiative. It's a nonprofit. They get a lot of support from like different other funders like Gates Foundation and different organizations like that. And they're there really to champion and expand the use of data. And so one of the projects that they do, for example, they have classes. So they'll bring in people from different states. They, like people who work for me have gone to their classes to learn techniques for reporting data, doing research and analysis on these large administrative data sets. So they do a lot of different things. One of the things they do is they host what it's called the Administrative Data Research Facility. That's a third-party data center that hosts multi-state projects. And so the idea here is we got a grant from them, us, Washington, DC, and Virginia. We received a grant. And under that grant, what we're proposing to do is share some of Maryland data into this Administrative Data Research Facility. Washington, DC, and Virginia will do the same thing. And then we will, basically what we're doing in Maryland, we will do on a larger scale or different scale with, hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
You probably, I don't know if you did it on picture or on.
No,
phone.
we just talked on.
Delegate Pasteur.
From the top, I'm just.
No, yeah, you should.
Not from the top.
And so we'll do it basically the same thing on a bigger scale with inside this third-party data center so that we can do a report with Washington, DC, Virginia, and us on student outcomes in the region. There's a lot of evidence that has been cited that there's a lot of movement within the region, Washington to Maryland, Maryland to Virginia, and all different permutations, and so this would allow us a better and more in-depth understanding of what happens to our students when they graduate, especially students in Montgomery County and Prince George's County who are so close to the district. We think there's a lot of movement across that district line. It also helps our neighbors. It's going to help Washington, DC. I think they don't know who's going in the other direction, and the same with Virginia. And so that's the goal.
So the proposal in this bill, Alistair, am I correct, is just for these 3 jurisdictions, right? These 3 states?
It's not limited to that.
Okay,
So
okay.
so what the bill is saying is it would.
What
the bill is saying is it would authorize my governing board. My governing board is made up of the principals of all of the agencies that share data with us. So the Secretary of Higher Education, the Superintendent of Schools, the Secretary of Labor, all of those people are on my board. And so they're very focused on the security and safety of their data. They would this bill would empower them to make a decision to allow us to do to share data in a party data center for the purpose of doing a multi-state report. In all likelihood, the third-party data center will be this Coleridge Initiative's Administrative Data Research Facility, but the bill is drafted a little bit more broadly than that. I think the thought process at the time was like, well, what if Coleridge goes out of business or there's, changes their name? Why, allow the board and with their expertise and knowledge about this subject, let them decide what the right data center is. But right now, the go forward plan is to work with Coleridge, and the specific project would be this multi-state report with Maryland, Virginia, and the state.
Initially, that's what they wanted.
Right. The bill also says that the governing board has to review has to approve every project that gets done. So let's say we do this project. The board will approve the subject of the project. The board will approve which data gets sent. And then if that project goes well, we would then either ask for our data back, say, okay, we're done, give us our data back. Or if the board approves and we want to do another project, the board would have the authority to say, let's do it.
So you've only shared data for specific projects, not
Correct.
willy-nilly, if you will. Okay, not writ large.
Yes,
Okay. So I said to someone, they'll bring the data back, but they said, well, once it's been there, how does it cleanse if we bring it back?
right. So one of the requirements, so this facility, and I think this causes a lot of confusion. They have a security certification. It's called this FedRAMP certification. It's just it's a standard set by the federal government, but it is not a federal government data center. It's just that the data center complies with the federal standard. Part of the standards is, a certain level of security, really one of the highest levels of security for a data center. They're subject to, annual audit, security audits. And then one of the other requirements is that in the data sharing agreement that we have, it will specify that I have the right to say, delete my data, destroy my data, remove it from your system. They have to do that. There's a NIST procedure for how they're required to delete that data. And then they're required to give us a certification that's been deleted. And that's actually something that they can be audited on.
Okay.
So if they want to keep their FedRAMP status, they would have to be able to demonstrate that they deleted or the request of their customers.
You're doing this, I thought maybe you had something there.
Pardon?
You look like you might have a question, that's all.
I'm saying I use that. I used to write grants for the College of Southern Maryland, the TRIO programs, and of course we use longitudinal data. So what you're saying is very practical.
Right. So, and just on a more base level, how do you gather data on where students are going? Like, how do you know that my son now who is 30 years old and working in the governor's office, that you do surveys? Do you survey people for that data?
No, again, this is administrative data. So if your son went to school in a Maryland public school, we would have his public school record. If he's. So we would have his public school record if he went to public school starting in at least in 2008 forward. If he went to college starting in 2008 forward, we would have his college record.
Okay.
And if he's in the workforce, we would have his in Maryland workforce. We would have his unemployment.
But now, if somebody went and worked in Virginia, you would
Right.
also be able to find them and say, look, they went and worked in Northern Virginia at this, thing
That's
that is
correct.
not the FBI headquarters, because that's going to be in Maryland. Okay.
Right. Well, that's also, right, there's still gonna be limitations because that's federal and federal, we get our labor information from unemployment insurance. Federal government employees aren't part of the UIH, the federal government doesn't. pay
And the
for
number
those.
is, the data, the ID number obviously has to have enough information in it to give away age and various other pieces of data for you, or that information's attached to it.
Right, so the personally identifiable information include things like name, date of birth, social security number,
Okay.
this data science student ID number and things like that. But one other thing in the bill says this is that wherever possible, instead of sharing identifiable information, that we would use some sort of privacy enhancing technique. And so what Coleridge does with a lot of their multi-state partners is they will use a hashing algorithm. So instead of providing you with my social security number, they would provide a hash value of it. So it's an algorithm that basically distorts the number. As long as the other two parties are using the same algorithm, they'll still be able to bring that data and match it.
Did you want to ask something?
I think it's better coming from you.
Oh, yeah. So what? I should ask your question and pretend like it's mine. Go ahead, please.
Right. I know the answer to this question, but
Sure.
sir, under the current law, if this bill were not passed, is it not true that MLBS is authorized to share data with the federal government through the US Census Bureau? And would not this law change that authorization?
Oh, I think you're right. So there is a provision in state law right now that allows us to share data with the US Census Bureau. And again, if the board approves it. that provision was put in for a very narrow purpose, which was to participate in the Census Bureau's SEO, which stands for Post-Secondary Explorer System. So that is looking for college. So, and we're not doing it, MHEC is doing it. So we never implemented that. The board never gave that approval. That was really the only thing that was for. So there's no interest by my board and in fact, we proposed removing that provision from this bill because we're simply just not doing it. It's being done by the Higher Education Commission.
So talking about how you come to it, like you trust this Cole Ridge, yeah, and you trust them because you're expert enough to look and say, we think it's good. So you have a board. How's the board selected? How do we get your board placed?
Sure. So I have a 15-member governing board. So I have more governing board members than I have staff.
Okay.
Governing board is made up of the principal of each of the data sharing partners. So that's the Secretary of Labor, who is also my chairman of my board, the superintendent of schools, the Secretary of Higher Education, the Secretary of DHS, DJS. We also have.
So these are all state agency heads.
Mostly state agencies. There's about
They're-
5. There's also a representative from PASAM. There's MAC and MICUA have representatives on the
Okay.
board. USM Chancellor is on the board. The president of Morgan State is on the board. And there's about 5 at-large members, but one of them has to be, appointed by PASAM. One has to be an
This is
expert
a
of our
fairly
data
active
systems.
board because they're not just, they are actually taking into consideration things that you want to do. And obviously there's something that they do that they're not interested in doing anymore. You just talked about a second ago.
Right, yeah, they meet quarterly, but we have a monthly research and policy advisory board, and so like a key person in each of their offices will attend this research and policy advisory board to make decisions about research projects, to make decisions about policies and procedures, and inform them of some of the decisions that are being made. Maryland, I'll tell you, and I don't give myself the credit for this, but when you all created the legislation that established the center, it is now a model, a governance model for longitudinal data systems.
You are
I'm
correct.
asked to speak everywhere to talk about our governance model.
I go to education, conferences and I talk about that. I say, well, yeah, we can get all that. And my experience has been is that you're tremendously cooperative. We say, we want you to do this. Yeah, we can do that. You're kind of like the library, you just go along with it. What do you want?
Just keep this. I'm not gonna listen to anything.
You can come in and sit in. We don't care. It's very, very fascinating. Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, I knew that's kind of why we do it online because I think we'd hold you forever. And, I don't.
I'm happy to, I'm here, I'm happy to answer any
You good?
questions.
Absolutely.
You have questions?
None of that. I think that was very helpful.
You're reachable though, because Delegate Pastor,
I thank you. You called me, got right back.
she had an early question and I said, you should talk to this guy because I hear we've met, but only mostly in passing. And
Because
Hornberger, if you're there, does he have any questions? Do you have any questions?
Man,
Oh, you still have one.
Yes, I had a question.
Okay, hold on. Delegate Pastor is establishing prominence here.
you.
Okay, go ahead.
So I had my own paranoia, obviously. We talked about that and you did, and you acknowledged that it was meaningful paranoia. It was not just me being crazy, that people can always take data and twist it any way they want to. They take the numbers that one group looks at for one reason and somebody else can come back and use it for another. But what really, I think all of the things you've said today sold me, but what else sold me is that it gives us an opportunity to take a look at where our young people, in the case of this particular project, where they go, what they do, as opposed to thinking that they just finish school, they languish and that's it. We get an understanding of what they do and how they make connections in other fields, in other places, and that they reach out, because sometimes attitudes think that folks hit 12th grade, and I'll just say, people of color very often, and then they just stay there. They don't really do a whole lot until something comes up. But this gives us some patterns, and it shows us where people are going. That question has also been asked. Where do they go? Where are these people? And I don't mean just people of color, anybody. Where are they moving? when we talk about folks moving out of state. Don't we say that a lot? People are leaving Maryland.
Yeah, wow.
So now we get to see how true it is or not true and where they're going when they do leave state and what it is they do. So that's what sold me. Doesn't mean I'm no longer paranoid, but just means I understand and try to. Thank you. Thank you.
Kevin Hornberger, what's up, man?
Yes, thank you for setting up the digital Zoom here. My question was, do these folks, this company, do they sign some sort of non-disclosure agreement? In other words, is there something beyond all of these best practices or certifications to make it so that the actual staff, in other words, if there's a bad actor there, there's some way to hold them liable.
Do they have, so we will, part of the process and what it's actually required in the bill is that we will enter into a data sharing agreement with them that will lay out things like, so they're required, and I think I sent you all if not, I can send it a frequently asked question. So they'll, make sure that, the system that when every project they have, it's in a partitioned part of their system and only shared with the approved users. The approval is determined by the data provider. So we get to say who has access to our data, and all of that will be outlined in a data sharing agreement that we'll enter into with them. So, and then that data sharing agreement, as all data sharing agreements do, we'll talk about issues such as liability and responsibilities and different things like that. So I think all of that will be covered by the data sharing agreement.
Okay. The next question I had is, if there is a breach, what's the notification procedure for us and for the students impacted?
So that's going to be specified in the data sharing agreement. And so we will work with, again, we're represented by the Attorney General's office. They will be involved in working with us on negotiating the data sharing agreement. There is a standard agreement that this organization has, but they also understand, because they work, exclusively with states, that every state is going to have some criteria that they want to establish in this. And so I'm sure we will work to make sure that our data are protected and liability is properly assessed.
That's good. You got your questions in there. You're good. Broke up a little bit, I think.
Yes, all set. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? All right. No guarantee we're gonna take this bill up. I'll talk to the chair a little bit and then see if and talk to you guys and see if you're still interested, but I appreciate your time. And hope that we see fit to help you out if we think it's okay. So really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it also.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.